All right, so Marjorie Taylor Greene, a representative, unfortunately from my home state of Georgia, decided to go on Matt Gaetz' podcast, which apparently is called Firebrand, okay? But she decided to go on this podcast to discuss the current structure of the American economy and how it's kind of screwing over your average person. A lot of these monopolies or companies that have grown to the size that they are basically monopolies are destroying small businesses. And guess what? This apparently is not the result of the incentive structure within our current capitalist system. Apparently, this is corporate communism, as Marjorie Taylor Greene is about to tell you. So let's go ahead and watch this, and then I'll give you my general thoughts on the rest of this.
These large corporations are
military-industrial
complex is a major issue. So I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism. Corporate communism destroys small businesses in America, and I have a very good example from my district. They destroy the small businesses, and the corporations gain all the control, and they can't be defeated. And they do the bidding of the government, like they're doing. Biden's saying, the government's not going to mandate vaccines, but the big corporations are doing it. Corporate communism, they're putting the policy in place through their businesses on their employees and on their customers, like we've seen with the airlines. These large corporations.
Okay, so first of all, she has the initial criticism there completely backwards, right? Her main criticism was, well, we have a government that is instructing these corporations on policies that they should implement within their structures. What? That's completely you have it completely backwards, Marjorie. This is the opposite of how our current government and economy actually intertwine and work together. The actual situation that we have is you have a capitalist system, a capitalist economy, in which corporations and billionaires grow to the size in which they are then able to use their wealth and power and control within the economy to bribe politicians to then go enact legislation on their behalf. So it's not that the government is controlling the corporations. I wish the government would involve themselves more in regulating these monopolies, because that's how you would actually break up the monopolies. But it's not that the government is stepping in to regulate and enforce rules upon these corporations. It's the exact opposite. It's that the corporations have grown to such a large size and with such a great amount of power that they are able to decide what the government is doing. That therefore has an interplay where the government creates regulations and laws that allow them to become even further entrenched and monopolistic within the economy. So she has this idea of how our economy and our government interplay with each other completely reversed, completely backwards, right? So that's the first point. The second point is, she doesn't know what fucking communism means. Neither does Matt Gaetz. Neither of these idiots have any idea what capitalism, or what the distinction is between capitalism, socialism, communism, anarchism, any of these ideologies. They're just using those words as key buzzwords to try to fearmonger to the people who they assume are watching this show and also don't understand what any of those words actually mean. So let's break it down in a very easy way that even somebody with the brain capacity of Marjorie Taylor Greene could understand. Okay, so our current structure of our economy is obviously a capitalist one. She would defend our current economy and call it a capitalist one when it comes to praising the good aspects of it. But then any negative aspects or consequences of the incentive structures within our current capitalist system are suddenly blamed on communism. Okay, so let's just get down to the basics. Take a company like Amazon, right? One of the worst offenders in terms of monopolistic predatory market practices. They destroy small businesses all over the country, okay? They're absorbing greater portions of the market. They're one of the largest employers in the United States. They're as close to a monopoly as you could get in terms of this kind of discussion. So take the structure, and this applies to any of these corporations she's talking about, take the structure of the economy, take the structure of those corporations, and understand what the distinguishing factors are between socialism and capitalism. So for Amazon, you have the Jeff Bezos, even though he just stepped down as the CEO, whatever, the CEO, the owners of these corporations. In the case of Amazon, it would be somebody like Jeff Bezos, the board of directors, who you have a tiny handful of a minority of people who work for this company, who are sitting at the top, who collect the vast majority of the profits, who collect the vast majority of ownership stake within the company, and they make all of the decisions for the company. That is an authoritarian structure of that corporation. That is a capitalist structure of that corporation. For it to be communism or socialist, these corporations would have to be owned and controlled and run by the workforce as a whole, okay? The workers at Amazon can't even form a fucking union in Bessemer, Alabama, because Jeff Bezos is cracking down on them using what the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, calls illegal practices. Okay, so not only is Amazon and all these other corporations that she's referring to, not only are they not communist or socialist structures, but they're the exact polar opposite of that. We can't even get an intermediary step of having a union at a lot of these corporations. So she has it completely backwards in every way, shape and form, right? She has it backwards in the sense that she doesn't understand how these capitalist companies are influencing legislation and how our government works, which, by the way, she takes donations from these same companies. She perfectly understands that corrupt aspect of it. But not only does she not really understand that interplay, but in addition to that, she doesn't even understand what capitalism or socialism or communism actually even mean. So understand, the point of this is that they are using this rhetoric because they understand how popular it is to criticize the establishment and the status quo. Why? Because our current capitalist system is not working for the majority of Americans. So people like her and people like Matt Gaetz, who have to pretend to be representatives of the working class, representatives of, the downtrodden man in America who's been exploited, they have to adopt leftist rhetoric. They have to adopt anti-establishment rhetoric in order to criticize the status quo without criticizing capitalism. Okay? So they are simultaneously pretending to be outside anti-establishment figures while doing as much as they possibly can to serve the interests of the status quo, to serve the interests of those same corporate communist companies that she's talking about right there. So they're complete frauds. They have this backwards. And on top of that, they're just fucking stupid.